You're listening to the Vint podcast, where we bring you interviews and stories from around the world of wine and spirits. From winemakers and critics to sommeliers and master distillers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping the future of today's food and drinks culture. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vint podcast presented by Coravin. Coravin is the world leader in at-home wine preservation, allowing you to pour a glass of your favorite wine and enjoy more bottles in your cellar without ever having to pop the cork. And we wrapped up our giveaway of the Coravin Sparkling Wine Preservation System. And the Vint podcast listener who will receive that Coravin for this last giveaway of the year goes by the username of Wall Street Bean on YouTube. Guy or gal who is Wall Street Bean, reach out to us at brady@vint.co or billy@vint.co. That's vint, vint.co. And congrats on winning your brand new Coravin Sparkling. It's an awesome device, and hopefully you can use it. We can get it out to you, and you can use it for the holidays a bit. Certainly use it on your champagne for New Year's. So thanks everyone who tuned in to the last episode, and we're excited to hopefully continue more giveaways like that in 2025. And as always, I'm joined by Billy Galanko, who is huddled in and ready for a great episode with a repeat guest of ours.
Yes. I'm very excited. We have Vince Anter back on the podcast, hostess for V is for Vino, friend of the program, friend in real life. Got to meet him over the course of the year. I think either right before the last time we had him on or after. Great guy. He gets to talk about a bunch of episodes. We'll talk about that at the end of this intro, but I did want to touch on one housekeeping thing and then the news as well. First, housekeeping wise, Brady and I are recording all of these episodes for you guys ahead of time because I'm going to be traveling for the next 2 weeks. So I hope you guys all enjoy. We actually, this year, you might remember last year, we had a couple from the archives. We have new interviews for everybody, so we're not going to miss a single episode over the holidays. And we'll be releasing every Wednesday as usual, like on Christmas and New Year's Day. So you guys will have a little something both of those days.
Yeah, if you have those long flights, pop in the earbuds or riding in the car with the kids, put Vint podcasts on full blast and give those kids some education.
Yeah, we got some really cool guests coming up, so it'll be really exciting.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. And I think that this time of year is interesting because you can take tidbits from the podcasts and at the dinner table or around the bottles of wine that you're opening up, you can be like, hey, I learned this about the Loire or about Burgundy today. Yeah,
for sure. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have Vince this week, because like we'll talk about there, V is for Vino for all of our new listeners is like an educational travel wine show. And Vince does a great job of walking you through different regions. The newest ones are the Loire Valley and Burgundy. And he walks you through, really takes you through what it's like to travel there, but also the wines. He meets with winemakers. And it's great because it's content that's at a level for everybody. So I watch it with my wife, but I'm learning new things. Even as an MW student, she's learning things, or it's engaging enough for her as a non-wine professional to enjoy as well. So I think it's something that you guys should all listen to his episode, and then over the holidays, watch both of those and share them with your family and friends.
Yeah, Vince is also obsessive about both like getting his wine knowledge presentation accurate and, factually right and distilled down for everyone, but also about the quality of his production. So it's like Netflix level production on these episodes that Vince puts out on his website. It's all free to consume. And yeah, I think it'd be hard to find another creator out there in wine or otherwise who has such high level content or high quality content that's accessible and free to everyone. So it's awesome.
Yeah. When you can subscribe to Vino VIP on his website, but they're all on YouTube as well. All the episodes are on YouTube. Easy to find after you watch a couple Vint Wine TV episodes as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep. But cool. So for the news today, I wanted to touch on more wine content. It was actually an article the article that we featured on our website is by Eric Asimov, and it's his top wine books of 2024. So when we had him on the podcast, I wanted to talk about his top wine books because I love his perspective on wine, and he couldn't share them on the episode because this article hadn't gone live in the New York Times yet. So I was really excited when it came out. He gave us a couple, but we got the full list now, and I guess I don't want to read all of them, but it starts out with 1,000 Vines by Pascaline Lepelletier. And it also includes, and I think he might have mentioned it on the podcast too, a season for that, which is the story about a guy, tax preparer, and his wife moving to the south of France and starting to make wine. which I think is really interesting. There's 4 or 5 other books that are really interesting on there, but I wanted to touch on, well, first, that everybody should go look at his list. I think they're all interesting. It ranges from reference books to stories, but the 1000 Vines, I actually have gotten that book. He highly recommended it when he was on the podcast, and now a number of other wine professionals have also recommended it to me. And I got it. It's a beautiful book. It really walks you through the nitty gritty of wine. I'm actually going to be using it as like a reference for my MW studies, but it brings you all the way from the soils, the importance of where wine's grown, all the way through tasting and recommended ways to identify wines and go through that. It's like both referential, but I also found it like really easy to read, and there are really beautiful illustrations in there. So I think it could definitely be one of these books that you get and you continue to reference over your wine journey, because you can, as you get to different levels in your wine journey, I think you'll understand different levels of the content more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I need more beautifully written reference books to keep stacking up on my coffee table. At home, those are like my favorite type of books. There's a great book on the Bordeaux first growths. It's just like photography, and yeah, that's one of my favorites. But yeah, speaking to the list, great to have narrative storytelling and not just, like I said, reference books, beautiful or not. For someone to dive into wine, I think they need the narrative component. So yeah, some great options in there.
Yeah, it's something for everyone. One is called Wine Confident. There's no wrong way to enjoy wine. The other one is called In the Heart of Italy on Tuscany. And then the other one is Who's Afraid of Romani Conti? And that's a book by the guys of Noble Rot over in the UK. And that looks like a really fun kind of a referencey wine book made by sommeliers for everybody to be graphically inspired. But I love Pascaline's approach to wine in general. Pascaline Lepelletier, who wrote 1000 Vines, and it's a pair like magnum opus, and it's pretty cool. And it's been really well received by every wine person I've spoken with so far.
Well, if Eric is recommending it, it's also really well written as well. All the books on the list, because obviously that's Eric's craft, and he wouldn't show something that wasn't beautiful to read as well. So
for sure. All right, well, now let's get over to our interview with Vint. It's a longer interview, so we won't do too much of an intro because a lot of you are already familiar with him. But we cover his Burgundy episode, we cover his Loire Valley episode. We talk a little bit about his new website, which if you're a Vias for Vino VIP already like me, you would have had to change your password. There's a whole bunch of new features that are available there. And then we also touch on the shorts that he shares as well. He gives a lot of interesting tidbits via short content on YouTube, and he had a kind of a funny story about one of them went viral. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, we got to talk a little bit because I think Billy and I both have been like respectively you've been to the Loire, right? Is that what you say in the...
No, I actually haven't been to the Loire, and I've only driven through Burgundy.
Driven through, that was what it was, driven through Burgundy. I spent a day in Burgundy, and then we stayed up in Dijon, north of it, which I asked him about. But yeah, I think that he captured really well what it was to be there, and he's done this across all of his episodes because they're a blend of wine, like wine knowledge dump, but also like travel and culture and food. And so I think he did a really great job of capturing and really echoing my firsthand experience when we were there in Burgundy as well. And it's definitely a high level of trust. And if you're trying to plan a trip to one of these regions, or even if you're just trying to explore the wines more, he's giving you like real raw what you actually see if you're on the ground visiting and talking with producers. So yeah, it was great to catch up with Vince again. Yeah, and so this episode this is the third time that we've had Vince on, and hopefully we'll have him many times in the future. And one way that you can help make that happen is go and check out Vince's stuff. So hopefully a lot of crossover will happen between the Vint podcast and Vias for Vino. But before we get over to the interview, just remember, if you're looking to drink more wine from your cellar without worrying about wasting the wine that you can't consume, one of the Coravin systems will certainly be your best friend. You can visit coravin.com, use code VINT15 for 15% off your purchase of any of their devices. And if you're a member of the trade, check out trade.coravin.com for exclusive discounts on their full range of products for home and for work. And without further ado, here is the founder, producer, traveler, wine extraordinaire from Vias for Vino, Vince Anter.
Hey, Vince, thanks so much for joining again.
Hey, I'm third timer club. I feel very, very privileged. I am very honored to be coming on. You know, on SNL, how they get the jackets, you get so many times you host. This is how I feel right now.
I see.
Yeah.
You get a larger listenership each time you come on. That's the prize.
No, I love it. People have been I've had some people reach out to me and say, "Oh, I heard you on the podcast," and then I checked it out. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think this year, since you've been on last, I've gotten to meet you in person. That was before we did that this year, right? That wasn't.
Yeah, I saw you before the last one because we did the Chile launch party and I saw you there in LA.
Well, either way, it seems like we've all come a long way since then. And it's been really exciting because I feel like I gauge my lifetimes with V is for Vino based on the episodes that come out, but also you have, and we'll touch on it, all the other content that you're producing now as well. But let's just dive right into what's new and exciting. You had 2 episodes come out right now, just in time for everybody to listen to over the holidays. You want to touch on what those are, and then we'll dive into more detail?
Yeah, so since we spoke last, Lebanon came out, but that came out earlier this year. And then just yesterday and then a week previous, so in the last 2 weeks, we released a double feature of French episodes, important French episodes, in my opinion. We released Bourgogne, or Burgundy, about last Sunday. And then just yesterday, we released the Loire episode. 2 awesome French wine regions. Obviously, Bourgogne is just renowned across the world. And then Loire is a personal favorite of mine. So each one had its fun little themes that we were able to put in there.
Before we dive into either of these, when you say Bourgogne, how annoyed, or do you get annoyed when people say Bourgogne? Because sometimes I hear people just straight say Bourgogne, and I'm like, there's no way that's how it's said.
I'm not even annoyed by that. So that is how the French say it. So that's the thing. So let's get into it.
But do they say it? Is it because they're saying Bourgogne so fast? It sounds like Bourgogne. Like, I feel it sounds like people are from like upstate Michigan when they say it sometimes.
Yeah. So to me, I describe in the episode as the difference between saying like Paris versus Paris. It just depends how you're going to pronounce croissant versus croissant. It doesn't bother me because both are right. But what does bother me is when people yell at me that I'm wrong, because we do so much research on our episodes and I make mistakes. I'm definitely wrong on occasion. Don't get me wrong on that. But people get very, very opinionated in how things should be pronounced. And to me, they're just differences in like your philosophy behind what you do with foreign languages. I don't ask for a croissant when I walk into Panera Bread. I ask for a croissant. And so I'm not going to say Bourgogne the way the French say it. I'm going to say Bourgogne, which is the English pronunciation. But I actually address this head on in the episode because I do think it's a little confusing for consumers, especially when they're first starting out, that we describe this region as Burgundy, and yet on every bottle, you're not going to see the word Burgundy. You're going to see Bourgogne. And so that's why I do it. I don't expect that the whole world's going to switch over and start calling Burgundy Bourgogne. But I just think having that familiarity of, oh, it's the same thing, at least if I like do that in the episode, that'll help people who are maybe unfamiliar with the region be like, oh, this is the same region, and they just say it differently.
I know everybody has a dialect. I was trying to narrow it down. We had Laurent Ponceau on not too long ago, and I was trying to hear how he said it. And I determined he landed somewhere in between. So yeah. I think it is just about how you say it. I like Bourgogne better. I'm never going to say Bourgogne, but I'm happy to know that it's at least partially right, because I had an MS teacher once who kept saying it, and I was like, all right, this sounds horrible. But
so they say the French say either Bourgogne or Bourgogne. They're usually one of those two. Bourgogne's kind of in the middle, maybe. But I've heard maybe it's a French accent thing, like a regional thing. I've heard some say what you say, which is Bourgogne, which is like I think the most French way of saying it.
There is an E on the end, so there's somehow this somewhere. But anyway, we'll figure it out. Or not figure it out. I think sounds like you've done the research. Everybody watch the episode and listen to what they have to say. All right, well, tell us a little bit more about it. Sorry to get sidetracked there.
No, I actually find that interesting because it is something we had a big internal debate about of how we're going to market it, how we're going to address it. Because also when we put it on YouTube, I wanted to go with what search volume is there. And people are searching Burgundy. But at the same time, I wanted to do call it Bourgogne in the episode. So my title and my thumbnail say Burgundy, but then we call it Bourgogne in the episode. So I did actually have a lot of like internal debates about how we were going to do this. But that being said, going to the region was really fun and really interesting for me as a wine lover. Anytime as a wine lover you get to travel to a region that you've consumed over the years and studied is super exciting. But the interesting thing about Bourgogne was the fact that it is a much humbler appellation and a much humbler region on the ground than you anticipate. I had somebody reach out to me and they put it really well. They're like, when I think about these, I put like Brunello di Montalcino and Bordeaux in the same camp. And then I put like Piedmont and Bourgogne in the same camp. Piedmont was very similar in the sense that huge reputation, expensive wines, known around the world, and that you go there and these are tiny little family-run farms and businesses, and that's how it felt when we were in Bourgogne. There really wasn't many grand estates. A lot of these places that were making these super expensive, world-renowned wines are like just farms and warehouses and nothing that in cute little villages. It's really, really quaint and wholesome, and it's cool as a wine lover to go see that because it's not what you expect.
Yeah, the extent of hospitality when we were there is like, you walk in the front door and they have a kiosk and a map of the region behind it. And they're like, yeah, take a look around. And then we have a table in the back and we'll bring you cheese. And that's the hospitality. Not that they're not hospitable. I'm just saying the infrastructure that we're used to here in the U.S. for visit a winery is very different.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
You nailed it. There's very little of that infrastructure. People are used to American tastings. When you come in, they have a printout. Here's your options for tastings. Here's the list of all the stuff. And it might be in a nicer area and all that. Not that cornhole. Even a little bit.
Yeah, bocce ball and cornhole in the back lawn, and then tasting. It's just
no. It is. They are focused on, and I talk about this. It's my big grand conclusion at the end of the episode. Not to spoil it, but they really don't care about anything but making and producing wine. They don't really care about having a hotel, having a restaurant. They really aren't even that enthused about marketing. They don't need to do a tremendous amount of marketing because of their reputation. They end up benefiting from that. So I get it if I'm them. They just focus on the quality of the wine and the purity of the place and the purity of the vintage. And if they get some tourism dollars or some people stopping in, great. Oftentimes, they can't even sell very much wine to the people stopping in because they're allocated anyway. So it's pretty wild.
Yeah, we have a few people who buy from the marketplace who just started getting into Burgundy, keep asking for like OWCs, like wooden boxes. And it's these, even the most top end for most of these just come in cardboard. And that's what you're going to get unless it. Yeah. But so tell us a little bit about how you went about it. Did you go top to bottom, left to right? Obviously you can't do left to unless you're just going to go the Haute Côte de Beaune and then down the hill. But
we did. So we did north to south, essentially, though we ended in the Côte d'Or. So we basically did north to south, skipped the Côte d'Or, but then our finale tasting was in the Côte d'Or. We did a home-based situation, though. So sometimes when we film a region, we travel in a region, we'll move around. And we did that in Loire, which we can talk about. But sometimes we just pick a city, and that's where we stay all week, and then we do excursions every day to go film. And so that we did that in Beaune. So Beaune was our home base. If you watch the episode, we do a bunch of little segments in Beaune. We go to the Moutarderie Fallot, which is the famous mustard factory there. We go to a restaurant and a really cool bookstore. I talk about Beaune. It's a really cool historic medieval town that has a bunch of great medieval / Burgundian Flemish architecture. So we'd stayed there and then we'd venture off. In the order of the episode, though, we go north to south. So we did Chablis first. We keep going down into Chalonnais and then Mâconnais, and then we end in the Côte d'Or.
Did you get to spend any time in Dijon?
We spent one day there because we were up there filming in Chablis and it was a little closer. And Dijon is awesome. It's a very different town. If you're going to the region and you're thinking, where should I stay? It just depends what you want. Maybe do a little of both, because Dijon feels like your classic big French city. Lots of restaurants, lots of bars, big plazas. Beaune is very quaint. You either love it or you want a little more. I tend to be a big city guy when I travel somewhere. I like options. But some people like the quaintness of a Beaune, which is still, they've got a fair amount of stuff going on. In fact, they have like almost 20 Michelin restaurants in a very, very small town because of where it is. And I think Beaune is actually more traditionally the home base that people use when they explore the region. That's more known as the wine capital. Dijon's its own thing. Dijon is its own city with its own infrastructure, whereas like Beaune is known as being where you come and where you stay when you're going to do the wine exploration. But one of the really cool things is that they have a museum there, a wine museum, like Bordeaux does. It's very similar. It gives you good introduction, and we show it in the episode. You get to interactive exhibits and go into exploring Bourgogne with a good understanding. But they have 3. They have one in Beaune area, one in Chablis area, and one in Mâconnais. And the reason for that is because of the whole Bourgogne philosophy, which is like climat and the place is important. The place is important. So why would we only have one museum for all of these different places? Every place is distinct, and we should have museums that reflect that. So interesting.
The distinctness of the place, I think that this is just a geography thing. One of the, outside of it just being a farming area, which like you, I didn't expect that, but was how much sense the maps that I'd seen of the region make sense once you're actually there on the ground and can look up the gradually sloping hillside. It like totally put into perspective all the maps, actually all wine maps. I just felt like I understood wine maps after going to Burgundy.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool because no, you don't really know a map better if you study wine than the Burgundy map. Like you just have to study that when you're taking your exams, or even if you're just getting into wine. So that's the map. And then it's very compact. Some maps, some regions are very big and spread out. Like Bordeaux is huge. So like I know the Bordeaux map very well, but it might take me 40 minutes to get from one part of the map to the other. Whereas when you're traveling physically in Bourgogne, it's 5 minutes down the road, you're going into the next village. And you're like, oh, this is that village. You go from Gevry to Volnay in 10, 15 minutes. You're like, oh, you can really see the difference. And it is cool to see the villages that these places are based off, because everyone is like this cute little town that has its own character.
Yeah, and the drive up the highway, and I don't remember the name of the highway, but look out your right window, or whatever side, I guess you're in, whichever direction you're going, but it's like Village on one side of the road, and then everything, Premier Cru, Grand Cru vineyards as you go up the hill on the other side, which I just thought was fast. Like it's not like that universally there, but it seemed in many ways across that highway was how I experienced it, which I thought was just really interesting.
Yeah, especially in the Côte d'Or. Now, I'm glad that we did. I think some people were maybe disappointed that we didn't spend more time in the Côte d'Or, but I was really happy with the fact that we added a segment on Chalonnais wines, a segment on, we went to Chablis, and then we went down to the Mâconnais area as well, because a lot of those Côte d'Or wines, there is accessible versions, but they can be a challenge to find or get or afford. And there's so many great values in those other regions, number one. And number two, they're distinct. It's not like you're just getting Côte d'Or light. They're different. Chablis is wildly different. Chablis is like nowhere else in the world. And I love those wines. And there's no place that makes Chardonnay like that. So it needs its own segment. And then same thing if you go down and go to Mâconnais and Mâconnais and Puy-Fuissé. Those are really tremendous wines in their own right, and they deserve their own feature. So we hit all 5 of the major regions, and I think that's important to talk about because sometimes the Côte d'Or gets all the love.
Yeah, agreed. I think the Mâconnais just got like 4 new Premier Crus as well as of like recently. So that's exciting. And it's definitely, there's a lot. I've had a bunch of cool wines from down that way. Can you talk a little bit about the producers that you saw there? And then I eventually want to get to the Loire too, because I'm personally a Loire fan as well.
Yeah. So in Mâconnais or in the whole episode?
Whole episode.
Yeah. Okay. So we did Domaine Grosso in Chablis. And that was my first introduction to, oh, this place is going to feel different than I thought it was going to be in my head, because they're making wines all across the range of Chablis, from Petit Chablis to Premier Cru and some Grand Cru. And it's just a father-daughter team. We showed up, and not to say, it's like what Brady said. It's not that they're not hospitable. It's just that there's not this sense of roll out the red carpet. It's more, well, you're almost going in their home. Like, a lot of times they live on the property. So you're not getting so much of a, oh, let me walk you from here to the tasting room. We have this set up and we have this set up. It's just, you show up and welcome to my family basement, and I'm going to pour you these wines that we make right over there. And the tasting room is very small, like as small as my basement room here. And so that was my first introduction to that. And they were awesome wines. Oh my gosh, the aged Chablis is one of my favorites. When you get that really chalk character, and then you start getting into mushroom on Chardonnay, that is one of my favorite things. That was Chablis. Then we went down to, I should mention too, we had some segments where I had some Côte d'Or wines that were not at the producer's place. We had his wines at the museum, and his wines are awesome, and they're pretty accessible and available, so you can find those. We had his Nuits Saint-Georges, which known as a powerful region and really, really great. And then we had a co-op from the Chalonnais that we did a cooking segment with, because co-ops are really important in Bourgogne, because you have all these fractured parcels of land, and sometimes the wine growers have to band together to have enough grapes to make wine. And so we did a co-op. Millibus is the name of the co-op, and those wines are great. And then we did Domaine Sèvres in the Mâconnais, and those Chardonnays were just unbelievable. Like, some of my favorite I've ever had. I put it in the episode on camera. There's a point where I'm caught off camera, and I'm just like, this is perfect Chardonnay. I'm just like having a moment with it. And I put it in the episode because you can't, the camera's not even on me, but you can just hear me saying it. It's just delicious. So really tremendous stuff, and beautiful view down there in the Mâconnais. Côte d'Or is pretty, but Mâconnais is like these rolling hills and these giant geological formations in the ground, so it feels different. And then at our Côte d'Or dinner, I should say picnic, we did 4 producers. We did Ramenais. I wrote them down so I can remember them quickly, because there's all 4. We did Ramenais. We did Domaine Saumon-Colon. We did Coffonay-Duvernay. And we did Fernand et Laurent Pilot, which was our host for the day. And all of them were really tremendous. And it killed me, because we only had time to show one wine per producer. But I wanted to get this group of producers together and get their collective experience, because they were all young winemakers. And we talk about how the next generation's kind of carrying the torch while keeping tradition, but adapting to consumer trends and other things.
Yeah, to that end, when you talk about the father-daughter team and you're walking into someone's basement, what struck you most about the way that the families and the producers there think about wine as both, hey, we are farmers, but also this is just like our decades-long family business, which I feel like here in the States, you either get the farmer producer who's like an agriculturalist, or you get the old money family who was into wine and started a thing, and they have this opulent tasting room. And then I don't know what other characteristics I could apply to what we have here, but it's just so distinctly different in the way that they integrate wine and life and business and family in France all over. But maybe you can speak to what you experienced there.
Yeah, I mean, that you actually described it pretty perfectly, which is it's usually one of the two, and instead it's both. It is this thing that they're inheriting. They get to inherit this estate. Listen, they're not making any more land in the Côte d'Or, and so they understand that what they have is valuable and precious. Most of the winemakers I talked to, what they said was that it wasn't really that anybody felt obligated to pick up the torch, but everybody ends up doing it. Like, they all end up keeping it in the family. I think just because they understand the weight of what they have. There's a little bit of the familiarity aspect, but I think more importantly, they just understand that this is something that a lot of people on the planet would kill for, a place with this land that is so valued, this business that is important both culturally and economically, and everybody just takes over. And there's families going back 15 generations. It really is something that like you said, is it doesn't feel like old money, even though it is a little bit, if that makes
definitely
sense.
not. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I always was, usually it was the child of the, either founder or was maybe a fourth, fifth, sixth, who knows what generation. But it was like the younger proprietor when I visited, we went to a few. And yeah, like just as passionate as you would expect maybe their great-great-grandfather was.
100%.
decades ago.
100%. And our last dinner, and I know we want to move to Loire, in our last dinner, we're sitting in this garage, and the grandfather of my young winemaker is there, and he comes and starts bantering with us. And then his father comes, and they all are still like passionate and involved with it. And I used the word old money a second ago, and I don't even like to use that term because of the negative connotation with it. Because it's not, there are wineries who are doing very well, I'm sure, but it doesn't feel like that. I think a lot of them are just making a good living doing something that they're really passionate about. They're not crushing it and making millions of dollars. They're making a good living, a business that they can take and cherish and then pass down to their next generation. I think that's more important to them.
Staying here for a little bit more, did they talk about when you got to talk to those different generations about, I guess you mentioned the trends. You can touch on the high level topics that you cover in there, like the trends, maybe growing, like how things have changed over time, how the farming has maybe changed, stuff like that.
So everywhere I go, every region, most winemakers are talking about climate change in some form or fashion. They're talking about how they are harvesting earlier, how it's potentially going to change the grapes, etc. I did find it interesting in Bourgogne that when they mentioned it, it wasn't as so much seen as a bad thing as some of the other regions because they've always had historic problems ripening grapes. So it's not that however you feel about this topic, it's not that they don't have concern about it, but they see it from a business perspective as, hey, our vintages are more consistent than they used to be. And if Bourgogne, they've been hallmarked by challenge, and they still have challenging vintages because they're continental, but it's more about just learning to manage those changes now. And maybe we're planting on, if you're in an area where you have some options, are you planting on a higher slope? Are you changing how you pick, how you prune, how you manage the vineyard? So there was a lot of talk of that, not as a bad thing, but just as we have to learn to manage it thing. And then there was a lot of talk of consumer trends and using less extraction because the consumers are drinking sooner and they're not laying down wines. And so now they're extracting less and making less tannic, less bold wines than their previous generations did. Those were two things that I think all the young generations of winemakers brought up every time I talked to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like when we were talking to Ponzo, he's like, how do I make a wine that people, if they are drinking my wine now, so I want to make it enjoyable, but also there are other people who are drinking the same wine 20 years from now. So how do I make it also age 20 years well? And it's like that constant conundrum of like, how do you do a little bit for everybody?
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. They want that balance. I think if you're if you're a purist, I think the entry level stuff, so the Bourgogne regional and maybe even some of the village level stuff will be maybe more approachable, and then they'll leave the Premier and Grand Cru as the old school style. That would be my guess is how they would figure that out and balance that.
Cool. Well, moving from one great value wine region, or I guess two, the Mâconnais and the Chalonnais, let's go over to the Loire. I know they make more than just white, obviously, but there's some of my favorite whites there as well. Do you want to talk about that episode a little bit and talk about your journey there? That one is left to right, which is what I was thinking about earlier. So
yeah, that is exactly what we did. So in Loire, you got to pick a way to go for sure. You can't do a home base if you want to see the whole region. So we started at the coast in Nantes, which is the area, the big city over there. That's where Muscadet is made. Then we ventured a bit inland and ended up in Tours, which is the right side. Now, I should clarify in our episode, not that we don't want to eventually, but we did not cover the Centre Loire, which is where Sancerre is made. We did everything as part of the Inter Loire area because there was enough. I did a full hour and over an hour episode on just that. It just felt like I didn't have the time, and I need to make the Centre Loire its own thing. So that being said, yeah, my personal favorite French wine region, and I say this in the episode, like I don't mean that to offend any of my previous French episodes, because I wouldn't give any of those wine regions up. I love them. I just love the Loire. It has such a place in my heart. I talk about in the episode how it is the wine region that's stuck with me. And the winemakers say this too. They say Loire is the wine region you can take with you all your life. When I started consuming wine and I started studying, I was drinking Loire because there were great value wines and I could get the best examples, what I call the blue chip examples, the best producers for a pretty affordable price. Or I could get really daily drinkers for $20 or less, and they were killer wines. And then as you get more into it, as you progress in your wine career, I was shocked how we use the word terroir-driven a lot, but the grapes there really do express the terroir, and you can really go in a rabbit hole of single vineyards, single area and appellations in that region in a way that you can in, for instance, a Bourgogne. It's crazy.
When you think about traveling across France, you have to, like, you're keeping terroir in your pocket all the time. When you're just like thinking about, okay, like wines of place, where am I moving, like where I am, or orienting yourself in the map and trying to understand the wines that you're tasting. What about the Loire? If someone is at home tasting a couple different, just maybe Sauvignon Blanc or whatever they're tasting from the region, what tips might you give them, just like the highest level as you were moving place to place here, to think about what's in your glass and how to categorize them?
Yeah. You mean in the Loire or in the general?
Loire? In the Loire.
Yeah. If you're doing Loire, you can separate it into, number one, you have the West Coast area. That's the Nantes area. That's where you're getting Muscadet. So let's quickly talk Muscadet. Wildly underrated wine. Can rival some of the best Chablis I've had at half the price. They've recently introduced the Muscadet Cru as well. There's 10 Cru vineyards there now. Every one is a different soil type and a different bedrock type. And that's why they got a Cru status, is because they were distinct enough to have that. And those wines, long lees aging, almost always concrete or stainless. They don't often use oak. So there, again, a lot of parallels to Chablis. And surprisingly, the grape that they use in Muscadet, which is Melon or Melon de Bourgogne, it's a Bourgogne grape. It's related to Chardonnay. It sucks up terroir the way Chardonnay does. And so you have so many of these elements that you love with terroir-driven Chardonnay from Bourgogne, but you get it in this kind of fun region near the coast that brings these salient wines. Also, you're far enough north in the entire Loire where it's similar to Bourgogne that it was all underwater. And so you have these historic soils, these ancient soils, a lot of them have like fossils and fossilized sea creatures in them. And so you get a lot of parallels. So that's the West. That's Nantes. And then as you move further inland, it gets a little tricky to generalize off location because there's Anjou, Saumur, and Touraine. But they all make the same grapes in different places. They all make Cabernet Franc. They all make Chenin Blanc. And then they all pepper in some other smaller Grolot and Gamay and Sauvignon Blanc within them. The main thing that happens is that the further east you get, so the further away you get from the coast, the more continental the climate, as you would expect, and the more varied the soils. So the more things you can plant. Basically, Nantes is its own thing, and then everything else in between, you have to learn the specific appellations, but know that the primary grapes you're getting are Cabernet Franc, Chenin Blanc, and then to a lesser extent, Sauvignon Blanc in Touraine.
Yeah, and having both sort of coastal type of influence as well as continental. You think about France, there aren't many regions where you get both of those influences and you can separate the wines of place out like that, right? Usually it's just like totally continental or like more coastal. but to have both in the Loire generally is a place to explore for value. Both of those.
Yeah,
titles.
I can almost qualify Loire in 4 main sections, which would be Nantes in the coast, everything in the middle, which is Anjou, Saumur, and Touraine, and then Centre Loire. That's not how you're taught it, and that's not even how we approach it in the episode. But from a style perspective, those are where you see the biggest style changes.
So a couple of things. One thing, well, I have a question. Did you guys go to Savennières? Because I haven't gotten that far in the episode yet.
We didn't go to Savennières. We went to Vouvray, and we did Domaine Champollion. But
Nice.
I love Savennières as well. Savennières, for people who don't know, known for the driest styles of Chenin Blanc. Oftentimes some of the most age-worthy, though I would argue they're all pretty age-worthy. But we didn't go there physically, but another area that's just tremendous.
Awesome. Yeah, so one of the things I love the most about your videos is I use it to like travel without going anywhere. So I get to appreciate that. So I've never seen like none, but I've read about it. So that was really cool. But also I love the level of detail you get because you start, if you didn't know that Muscadet was made by Melon de Bourgogne or Bourgogne, however we want to say it, then you would learn that in this episode. But also like you were interviewing one of the producers and he was talking about how they age in concrete, but it's like underground concrete, sur lie. Like here, what I'm thinking is sur lie. I'm picturing like a steel tank or maybe even above ground concrete tank. I just thought that was so cool, the level of detail that some of these folks are able to like, when you're watching, express to you, and then you put that all into your mind when you're tasting it. You're like, that makes much more sense how fresh and like saline and minerally it is. It's been underground, but that's also while they're getting like the body from the leaves. That was really cool.
I learn a lot of fun things like that on these episodes. And that's why I say if you can travel to these regions, you'll learn so much. That whole interview, I learned so much about Muscadet. Muscadet, when I started learning about wine, was before any of these crews existed. So it was like Muscadet is a shellfish wine with some salient qualities and greenness. And then you go here, and it has these beautiful stone fruit, yellow fruits, this great complexity, this great mouthfeel from extended lees aging. It's terroir-driven. It's not just, it's all the same salient kind of light wine. I learned so much from that. I learned so much from the Cabernet Franc tasting I did because we did 3 areas right next to each other. We did Chinon Bourgaille on Saint-Nicolas du Bourgaille, and we tasted them all side by side. And all of them had different soil, and all of them were wildly different. And I have always just, I have some favorite producers of Cabernet Franc, but I didn't fully understand the soil differentiation from appellation to appellation. And again, this is one of those things where it's, if you're starting out, great, grab Cabernet Franc for $20. It's always going to be a fun, chillable, great wine. But if you really want to get into it, you can learn all the appellations that make it and what their soil types are and what the differences is and get wildly different wines and experiences.
Yeah, Muscadet has come a long way. I went to, it was a splurge, but it was per se for my bachelor party with some friends. And I asked them to give me like stuff off the beaten path a little bit more, like not what they would just normally serve because it's a nice producer, everybody knows. And one of them was like an aged Muscadet. It had 10 years of age, and they're like, this is what we're drinking in the back. This is just as good as like you were saying, it's some aged Chablis. And it's so cool that it's served at a place like that now. And it's really become, obviously it's always been that way, but now it's getting more respect outside of the region. Can you explain a little bit more about what you get in the Cab Franc from the Loire in particular? Because I feel like that's one of those grapes that it's grown in Virginia now, it's grown in New York, but it's grown all over and has such, to your point, terroir expressiveness. And I love the Loire. There are some through lines, I think, from some other regions. Each one is distinctly special, and I think it's cool, worth explaining.
Yeah. So in a general sense, I have had Cabernet Franc from other places in the world. No one like Chenin Blanc. I just think Loire is very distinct. I don't even think you get very close. The only replica I've gotten close was actually Virginia, funny enough. I had some from the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia that I felt was similar to Loire Cabernet Franc. But when I have California Cab Franc, good wines, but much bigger, much richer. You don't get nearly the kind of characteristics that you get from Loire. So the Loire Cabernet Franc, much like the Chenin Blanc, I think of as savory first. And that doesn't mean earthy. It means savory. And that's a distinction because we think, okay, old world wines are always a bit more earthy. I think of the flavors of Cabernet Franc as some of that potentially herbal. What used to be known for green bell pepper, but I think as like they did with Carmenere, as they figured out how to harvest it, you don't get the green bell pepper so much as you get the herbal now. I almost always think of spice. I especially In Chinon and the sandy soils, I get cinnamon spice, not from the oak, from the grape, but general spice characteristics, kind of a roasted notes are common, like smoky notes are common. And if I get fruit notes, it's red fruit notes. So it has a lot of the same characteristics that we like, again with the parallels, that we like about Bourgogne Pinot Noir. And that's what's really fun. And the fact that it can be light in body and no tannin, or medium in both, medium in body, medium plus tannins. Again, just like different plots in Bourgogne based on where it's grown. It was another one that just, I couldn't believe how different it was. I always associated a lot of these grapes with being pretty similar across the region. And I was just so blown away when I did a side-by-side of all three of those appellations right next to each other, how each one could be paired completely differently, age-worthy completely differently, flavors different. The last thing I'll say, by the way, is granite. I love when it's grown on gravelly granite soils because I think Cabernet Franc really expresses that. You can smell it right away, the kind of pencil shaving aspect of it.
Yeah, Cab Franc definitely does suck up all that terroir. And maybe I'm more proud than Billy, but Virginia-affiliated people happy to hear about the comparisons to the Cab Franc there. And I think it also makes them just really accessible wines for having with food. Especially a lot of like the meats that we eat a ton of beef, especially stateside. And so I think that those are cool wines to have along with, and the acidity, the granite influence maybe, I think goes well there. Talk to a consumer of the region. Like if you walk into a wine shop and you want to get into some of these wines that you're talking about, what advice would you give someone to do? What would be their first steps?
The nice thing is that unlike other regions, you can't go too wrong. I would focus it on grape, even though I'm always big on place. I'd be like, okay, I want a good expression. If I'm just trying to get into Loire, I'm like, I want a good Muscadet. Technically, the grape is Melon de Bourgogne, but I want one good Muscadet. I want one good Cabernet Franc that expresses the classic characteristics of Cabernet Franc, all those savory components that I just mentioned. I probably want several Chenin Blanc. I want to try, because we talk about this, how versatile the grape is in the episode. In fact, Chenin Blanc was my aha wine, the wine that got me into wine. So I want to try probably a sparkling, a dry, and an off-dry. And if I'm really going crazy, I want to try one of the Botrytis sweet versions. So I want to try several different versions of really good Chenin. And then I want to try a killer Sauvignon Blanc that really has that flinty component that some places in Loire can get. Because especially I have people who tell me that Sauvignon Blanc can be a bit polarizing. A lot of people don't love it, depending on where it is. So a classic Sauvignon Blanc example from Loire, I've had ones that can range into tropical land, because I think a lot of people don't like that greenness gooseberry flavor that can come with Sauvignon Blanc, but you don't really get that as much in Loire Sauvignon Blanc. Anyway, that would be my advice: is one good Muscadet, I guess 3 or 4 Chenin Blanc, one good Cabernet Franc, and you could obviously get more, but at least one, and then one Sauvignon Blanc. And if I threw in one more, one good Gamay, because Gamay is one that has gone up in price in Beaujolais, and they're making really, really good ones in Loire.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of wines, but your dollar's going to go much farther than the first part of our episode buying those wines, right?
You could get crazy great examples of all those wines for $100. You get 5 or 6 of those wines under $100. Do a killer tasting at your house with some friends and really make a thing of it. There's very few regions you could do that except Loire.
Oh yeah, yeah. And for those of us who frequent natural wine bars, there's also so much Pinot d'Anise green grown out there, along with the Grenache. So there's also just a bunch of easy drinking, approachable stuff, all the way up to these really cool wines that you're talking about.
And I didn't even mention rosé. It's the number 2 producer of rosé in the country. We went to Le Duc Franc, and they have the regular rosé, but they also have these off-dry Cabernet d'Anjou or Rosé d'Anjou versions that are like very crowd-pleasing, cool with maybe semi-spicy food. And I didn't even touch in the episode about the whole natural wine scene there, which is, yes, there's a lot of it. And that's what's fun, is that region is big enough that there's so much going on. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can explore it to a very, very 100th degree and you're still finding new areas to explore. If you're into natty wines, like you can do that. If you're into the classic producers and the blue chip examples, you can do that. If you want just fun wines for everyday drinking as for Thanksgiving, you could do that. It has everything.
Awesome. Well, aside from the episodes, I want to touch on a few events or topics that have happened in your world since we last spoke. And you can touch on them in any order you want. One, you have a new website, a new version of the website, which I think is exciting. I was just dabbling this weekend. You almost won a wine award. In my mind, you got second place. And I think you don't know, but... And you've also last time you were talking about how you were going to start doing more short form, like snackable content. And you were saying how hard it was going to be, but I think you've done a really good job at it over the past year. So I want to talk about that a little bit as well, and maybe one particular example.
Thank you. I love that you're holding me accountable on everything that I've said and on the last podcast. Yeah, so number one, the award is great. So I got nominated for the Pall Mall Awards, which are in London. I believe you guys had turned me on to it, actually. You had sent me an email saying, hey, you should apply. And I got nominated in the top 5, which was really awesome. So we went to London. We did not win. The wonderful Andre Mack won, who's the man. He's the nicest guy. So he ended up winning, but
that's top 5 in the whole world. Yeah, not just
planet,
not just US
planet.
Yeah.
So we were flattered. We also got nominated. I also got nominated for Wine Communicator of the Year with IWSC, International Wine and Spirits. And I got nominated in the top 5 for that too. Again, didn't win, but flattered to be nominated. It's cool to be recognized. Obviously, not why you do it. One thing that is important is that it does give us, the more kind of credibility we have, the more people find us, the more we can continue to produce episodes. So from that aspect of it, just being able to continue this ball rolling, it is important. Thank you for putting me onto the award to apply, and it was cool to get nominated.
Of course. Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Selfishly, I guess, for you, I want, like, the British folks, they had the wine show for a long time, and I love that, but nobody here in the US knows the wine show. And I'm assuming that V's for Vino is great, but maybe more people in the UK don't know, and the wine shows know more, so they need to fill that void. V's for Vino is perfect. So I hope Pall Mall just spread you guys out there for everybody.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Funny, and I love the wine show, and Amelia is a friend. She was one of the hosts, and she's awesome. One thing I have gotten a comment on occasion is that I think I don't come off, because I don't have the accent, and I have this very harsh, I can be a little bit over the top with my Midwest accent. I think it turns some people off from maybe the UK or other countries, but maybe I'm just being self-conscious.
Yeah, and I could see that. Like Joe Fattorini really does have his very special British accent that gets you out there. But no, your accent's great. It's endearing.
So anyway, that was fun. What was the second question?
We had a website and the shorts. Yeah.
Website and shorts. Website, I'll talk quickly. It's exciting for me, but it's very unexciting for consumers right now. But it lays the groundwork for us to do a lot of stuff. So we have a VIP club. It's $5, $10, or $20 a month, and you get early access to the videos. They're ad-free. You get Zoom hangouts with me once a quarter. We do weekly emails, and you get members-only content and raffles. It's a way for us to grow that doesn't rely on anything else other than our fans. And our goal is to get that big enough where we can make a lot more content because we're getting all our funding from basically crowdsourcing rather than be beholden to anybody else. I've had this for a while and it's been going great. We have a great community, but I started it on a platform that was meant to sell wine. And then I pivoted and I did this digital subscription model. So I had to get my whole back end to a new website. It's unexciting, but what it does, like, it doesn't look any different if you're a consumer, really. The whole front end looks the same. And even when you log in, some of the how you manage your account changed a little bit. But I changed my commerce platform because now, in the long term, we're going to be able to do a lot of really fun stuff. Some things are just simple things that I couldn't do before. Offer gift memberships or do some more extensive stuff with the back end of my website, like restrict certain pages, things like that. Some of it was logistics, like sales tax things. And then some of it is the stuff that in the 3 to 5 year, like making an app potentially and having it all link up with your account. Offering, when I do a merch store, which we're looking at doing in the next year, automatically as a VIP member, you get your discount applied right away. Just some things that set us up for the macro. I didn't know how long this ride was going to last when I started. And now that we look like we're not going anywhere, I wanted to set us up for the future. So that's all. That's on the website. But I appreciate you asking. And it's been cool to see the growth of the VIP club and kind of put that as a business model, because I like our content's free. It's always going to be free. That's like my pledge. So the VIP is a way we can, sustain. And then shorts content, which was a fun endeavor. So I actually hired a wonderful kind of marketing assistant. She helped me a bit with the social, helped me get it off the ground. Her name was Annie. And we worked together to craft shorts that we wanted to be in the same vein as our content. But the problem with short content for any content creator, winery who's looking at getting into shorts, is you can't reuse content. It really has to be made specifically for the short field. Like I used to take some clips from the episodes just straight and try and adapt them in short form. It does not work. Everything needs to be tailored to the platform that it's going on. And so what we would do is we do film content specifically for the vertical format, specifically for the 1 minute or less soundbite. And we'd post that way. And that's when we started seeing a lot of success. So if you're a winery and you're like, how am I going to make content? Like you don't even, it doesn't even have to be fancy. We do it with nice lighting, but just make sure you're making it for that platform. Study the platform, understand how it works, understand what goes. For instance, in a short form video, I have a lot quicker that I need to hook somebody. The title and thumbnail need to hook somebody in about 3 to 5 seconds. In a YouTube video, I might have the first minute or two. It's just a different nuances. And so anyway, we've seen a lot of success with it. We've had a fair amount of videos. Most of our videos get 10,000 views or more. Several have gotten over 100,000. A couple have gotten a few million. It's been good.
Yeah. You were going to tell me what. So I noticed that we're working on our YouTube as well. We're not anywhere near as far as you, but I noticed your also video took off, and apparently there's a funny story behind it. You want to let us know?
Can
what
I
that
swear on this podcast mildly or no?
Yes. Yeah. We've had a few people just swear nonstop, so you're good.
Great. Okay. So I released this video. It's for those who don't know what an ASO is. It's AHSO, and it's a wine opening tool for when you have an old bottle of wine. The cork is fragile. Instead of grinding into the cork with a waiter's corkscrew that has the worm and it would break the cork, it hugs the cork. It goes on the side of it and it hugs the cork, and then you pull it out. It's a tool that helps you do that. But the internet being the internet, they all heard and saw asshole. And so the YouTube short went incredibly viral, because what I've learned is it's like there's no such thing as bad press. When the comments start coming in, the algorithm doesn't care whether they're good or bad. They care that there's engagement in comments. And what's funny is that while there's a lot of comments making jokes, the reality is there's a lot of likes, and it's being shown to wine lovers too, who are not commenting and just seeing it as a wine video. So it got put in front of winos. That's how it got traction. But it went viral because of the comments. So that is a less than flattering story of how that one went viral. But we've had other ones that have gone viral for the right reasons.
That's hilarious. Well, I tried to capitalize on that with our shorts, and I made that explains why it worked, because we got thousands more views on the short. I did, oh my gosh, the Durand instead. So I was like, ASO plus corkscrew. So I see why it picked up on the ASO algorithm. Although it turned out in that episode, I started filming with zero planning and completely forgot how to use a Durand as I was doing it. So I put the corkscrew, and then I put the ASO part through the little slots on the top of the Durand, like where basically how you store it, instead of doing it perpendicular. And it took 9,000 views until somebody commented like, "You're not doing it right." And I was like, "Oh my God, I posted it backwards." So then I took it off, because once you started, to your point, you had somebody filming for you. I just turned the camera on. I was like, I got to do this whole thing in a minute. And then I completely forgot how to take it out. And I was just like, all right, here we are. So kudos to you for doing it well. It's really hard.
No, thank you. And now that we've figured out a formula of what works, it's one of those things, like anything, you learn by doing. The more you create content, the more you'll figure out how to get people engaged right away, what kind of content is working for your channel, what your audience wants to see, especially with shorts. Because with the YouTube videos, I can only release a couple a year, or even if I do some studio videos, you can only release them so much. The shorts, you're releasing many. And so you're getting a lot of shots at the dartboard. And so you have a lot more data to figure out what's working and what's not, and then you can react. I think the big thing I would say if anybody's trying to get into content creation in the shorts field, which is a challenge because there's a lot of competition, but good sound and potentially good either lighting or at least good setup is more important than you think if you're trying, especially if you're running it for a company. I see a lot of companies who have a professional product. Their product is a high-end product, but their shorts are maybe not as up to the level of their product. And spend some time, hire an intern, hire somebody to help you, spend some time learning about the basics of lighting. You don't even need a light per se if you're outdoors, but backlighting versus front lighting, like literally just turning around. Things like that, composing a shot. Those kind of little things will actually make a difference in your trajectory if you're getting into short form content.
Awesome. So I think we'll wrap up here. This episode will be going live right before Christmas here. Do you have anything special that you're going to be drinking over the holidays?
Oh man, I haven't even got there. I have been so insane trying to get these episodes out that I have not even started Christmas shopping or anything. I'm probably going to, because I'm going to my parents and now they're all excited about the Loire and the Burgundy wines. So I'll probably pick out some good ones that I like. I have a lot of favorite producers from both regions. I was maybe thinking a Jolie Sauvignon, which was that was like my aha wine. So that would be fun to share with my parents. So maybe I'll do that. And then there's a couple Berg producers I would love. Maybe PYCM, Pierre-Yves Colmaret. It's a favorite of mine. I don't know. Who knows? So I will have fun shopping and finally enjoying the break. And I hope everybody can now take advantage of the fact that they have some extra time and watch the episodes over the holidays with family, because that was the goal. I worked to get them out by the holiday because I knew people had some extra time on their hands.
Awesome. Well, I think hopefully my parents will watch them too and get into it. My dad just discovered that we've been doing a podcast for 3 years, so he now listens to the episodes. But thanks again so much for joining again, Vince. This has been great. Glad to have you back for 3 and looking forward to number 4 in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. We'll chat again soon.
All right. That was our interview with Vince Anter. I hope everybody learned a little bit more about the Loire and Burgundy. I hope everybody goes and seeks out at least one of the wines he talked about. There's literally something for everybody's price point. And then when you do get those bottles, you can use your Coravin to taste them without having to open them. And you can taste them all side by side or save them for later. That is our episode for this week. We'll be back with another episode next week. Cheers.